Hot take, I'm not using really Claude anymore too much. My main take on this whole situation between Fable and Sol is I get rerouted with every single request. Literally creating a thumbnail for YouTube, it rerouted me to Opus 4. I tried to go back and forth and ask why, and it just obviously wouldn't give me an answer. It was absolutely nuts.
Sol 5.6, it makes more sense because you just get the same things for most people's use cases for much cheaper and you can go much longer.
Without me asking, it built it in a way where if there's no good answer, it will tell me that there's no good trade to take that day. I found that to be very impressive. My name is Leor from Exploring ChatGPT, and I am joined by my friend Daniel. How's it going, Daniel?
It's doing good. And yeah, Daniel from Why Try AI if you haven't met me before. So.
Yeah. We're going to tell you why to try Sol today. Sol being GPT 5.6, and just our opinions on it, what we've experienced, and really comparing it to Fable as well.
Yeah.
Hot take, I'm not using really Claude anymore too much. I'm just going to throw that out.
You went right back to your ChatGPT comfort zone as soon as Sol came out.
Off the bat, as soon as it came out, I tried it. Now, again, like we've spoken about super strong models before and how most people don't need them, but my main use case for very strong models is to help me edit videos. I've noticed that the stronger models do a better job, do it quicker, and follow instructions better, basically. So my main take on this whole situation between Fable and Sol is I get rerouted with every single request.
That's with Fable, I assume, right? Because of all the extra guardrails.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because I'm not trying to do any cybersecurity, biotech stuff, but it could be that it's flagging certain keywords within the videos and I'm trying to edit, because I speak with cybersecurity people, with sometimes political stuff, government, I don't know.
No, anecdotally, there is a lot of evidence that it's the guardrails are a bit too tight around it, and sometimes completely innocuous things get flagged and rerouted to Opus 4.8 or whatever the default is.
Yeah.
And it's a case of trying to be better safe than sorry type of thing. And then, of course, that limits certain things that you can do with the models.
Yeah.
Which
So
in some cases defeats the purpose. I haven't really used Fable for that much stuff, to be honest, because I'm on a pro plan. I will burn through my tokens very quickly. I've tried a few experimental things. I don't know if you know the guy called Nick Sarayev. He's on YouTube. He's doing a lot of agentic and automation work and stuff. And he came up with this cool experiment where you can basically just tell Fable to come up with concepts for sites and build them, just using its own taste. And saying it's fun to just get out of its way and watch it just come up with stuff and build it out for you, like giving it access to all these tools. And I tried a couple of them. It's actually quite fun. It's fun to watch it basically dream up things, come up with concepts, and actually implement them without you touching anything, and then just being surprised by it. But this is just a gimmick. I still, for my workhorse, I still lean on Opus 4.6, not even 4.8. I just find it to be the most consistently reliable for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that was brought up to me by another creator, Sam Illingworth, I spoke to him about how I was getting rerouted so much with Fable and I wasn't with Sol.
Yeah.
He was like, maybe Claude is just more transparent about it. That's also a possibility that, because when you use Fable, it will say, now you're on Opus 4.8. If you ask it why, it usually won't give you a specific reason. It'll just so I will say the main thing that really stood out to me here, and I think that actually OpenAI putting out 5.6 Sol is doing Claude users a serious positive benefit, because it seems like Anthropic is dragging out the date of Fable was supposed to only make until this date. Now they're extending it and they're extending it again. Yeah. I think OpenAI is putting pressure on them to do that because they're realizing, wait, if you have a $20 subscription with OpenAI, you can use Sol 5.6. And
you get much more bang for your buck with OpenAI for sure.
Yeah, and usually you won't reach your token limit. So Sol is $5 input and $20 and $30 output per million tokens versus Fable at 10 and 50. So it's basically double the token usage for Fable.
And also, I think the general hourly limits you get on a regular subscription with ChatGPT are higher, because what you're mentioning is like API costs if you pay per use per token. But even on a $20 plan, I think you can get such good mileage out of Codex, or Sol specifically 5.6 on Codex, much more so than you would get on Claude Code for the same $20 for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And Again, I already, like last time we talked about Fable, I said most of us will never hit the upper edges of its capabilities because our use cases are not that high. And because of that, Sol 5.6 it just makes more sense because you just get the same things for most people's use cases for much cheaper and you can go much longer. And again, anecdotally, from what I've been seeing and reading, many people actually prefer 5.6 Sols for many practical use cases and even in terms of taste sometimes. So
Yeah.
it really depends on the specific niche you're in before you start noticing a major difference, I think.
Yeah. I will say I noticed definitely the main difference is the rerouting. That's number one. Number
That's
two,
frustrating.
I noticed it's just as good when I'm using the MCP for Descript for video editing, just as good as Fable, even though I was able to use Fable initially for video editing. And I noticed up until the 5.6 Sol release, it was rerouting me constantly. Only really in the beginning I was able to edit with it, and it did a great job, Fable. I will mention one thing with Fable before the rerouting extravaganza. I don't know if it got worse over time. It felt like it did to me. I was able to build an app for a friend. I won't get into too much detail about what the app is, but let's just say it was able to pull live data and help him. He runs auctions for. I'm not going to get into details about what he runs for, but he runs auctions, and I built an app for him to be able to make his auctions better. I'm just
Okay.
not going to say exactly what it is. The odd thing that happened was, first of all, Fable created the app within 10 minutes. Opus 4.8 couldn't do it. So I will say that was an automatic difference. But interestingly enough, when I tried to send him, I built it in a way where it was very easy because he's not technical. So it
Right.
came with like a README file, 15-minute setup. And when I tried to send it to him, Gmail actually did not allow me to send it. And it said that I can't send it for security purposes. So I had to send
Gmail.
it. Yeah. I had to send it
Interesting.
through Dropbox. I don't know what it picked up on within the file.
What kind of format was it? I'm wondering, is it like an HTML file or what is the
It was just a folder.
okay.
Yeah, it was just a
Interesting.
folder with a README file and
Yeah.
instructions. So that was odd. And now I'm working on an app for myself, which I'll be glad to share with you. Hopefully by next week I'll have more details about it. I know you're not too much of a finance guy, but I'm building an app to basically help me with options trading.
Yeah, because
So
I know you're doing some day trading or like some stock trading in general.
yeah, I'm not like a
So
big fan of trading personally. I'm more like set it and forget it guy and just index funds. But I did recently have a little bit of success with it on my own. And I realized maybe I should try to do something with Sol and see if it actually, first of all, it had no issues with this at all, which I think
right.
is an interesting topic because finance in general and the stock market in general, you would think that maybe there were some guardrails set up to help to warn people or to prevent people from using it to try and gain some type of edge in the market, which it usually doesn't
Right.
exist anyways, but it had
Right.
no issues so far.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I really think there is a lot of politics here as well, right? Anthropic have been under pressure because OpenAI kind of, I think, is on the government's good side. So somehow they didn't have to go through the same. You could argue that they were also doing a staggered release, right, for Sol. It wasn't available immediately. It had to first go. While Anthropic went through the whole roller coaster of releasing Fable, then being asked to stop the whole thing because of export controls and the foreign people getting access to it, and then they reintroduced it with even more like stricter rerouting regulators. So I think that's probably playing into it as well. Sol didn't have to contend with the same scrutiny, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the models themselves; it's also the harnesses and the guardrails built around them, right?
Yeah.
But
I,
the end result, as you said, the product becomes less usable,
yeah.
and whether it's the model or something else doesn't matter for the person who uses it.
There's definitely something going on there. I'm sure you've heard, maybe some people in the chat haven't. OpenAI is offering the US government a 5% equity stake. So now it's like clear as day. If we didn't think so before, once the money gets involved, that's when,
It's a sort of insurance, right? To be like, hey, we're probably not going to get as much red tape if the government is also interested in. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation here about what it could be. But
yeah. I just think now it's clearer. I think it's a really smart move. If I was Sam Altman, I'd probably do the same thing. The interesting thing about it to me, now I want to, and this is a little bit off topic from Fable versus Soul. We'll jump back into that, but apparently there's something about redistributing non-existent profits to U.S. citizens. So that's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if how well that's really going to work out, but apparently they're going to hand over a 5% stake to the U.S. government. It's not like the U.S. government's going to be giving them 5% of their IPO price, which would be like $40 billion to own 5% of OpenAI. They're just handing it over. And and then the U.S. government's claiming that they're going to redistribute those funds to U.S. citizens. And what funds they're going to redistribute, I'm not sure, because OpenAI does not make any money right now.
Or rather, what they do make is getting eaten by the compute
No,
costs and training costs and everything. Yeah.
yeah, profit. They don't have
No
any profit.
profit. Yeah. I don't remember what the last figures were like. Whether, yeah, I don't think any of them are projecting to even break profit until like 2030 or something like that. I don't remember. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
almost all of them are like saying, yes, it's going to be a run rate revenue increase, but the profit is, we're looking like some years away
yeah.
before we even get to break even. So, yeah.
In terms of Soul, have you tried it? Have you talked to people using it? Like, what do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I have both Claude Code or Claude and ChatGPT, like minimum paid plans for each one on $20 a month, because I piggyback on working with both of them. And Soul has been really surprisingly solid and consistent for a lot of things, even just as a model to use for regular chat to get answers and so on. I did a couple of course, the usual gotcha tests, like the riddles and stuff like that, and it's pretty solid on those. So I have no reason to believe, or haven't seen any indications that Fable is like head and shoulders above it at all. I think they're very comparable models. If anything, I think 5.6 is snappier and more like execution oriented, while Fable is a bit more like let's discuss it, which I think is also good for different use cases. But I haven't done so much testing with either one of them to really like pinpoint like exactly where that margin lies for each one of them. I think both are pretty competent models depending on what you want to do. And if you want to eliminate the chance of being rerouted to Opus 4.8 because of queries, and if you hit that a lot, then I think Sol 5.6 is probably a no-brainer if you don't want to run into those roadblocks all the time.
Are you getting rerouted a lot with Fable?
No, I haven't seen that happen. That's why I'm saying like my use cases have been pretty niche. I haven't yet hit a situation where it's at, oh, sorry, you're now going to Opus 4.8.
Wow.
Again, because for most of my day-to-day work, I don't even use Fable because, again, that's my philosophy. I don't think I need Fable for most of my stuff. I just default to Opus 4.6.
That's interesting. But even when you used it, you didn't get rerouted.
No, because again, I used it on very open-ended things like, hey, read this guide from Nixarayev and see if you can build me some novel sites. Do what you want. So basically, my request didn't contain any niche directions that it could interpret it as me like leading it towards whatever cybersecurity flags or I don't know, chemical weapons or whatever. It just said, okay, cool, I'll just build stuff on my own, which means that it self-censors, I'm assuming, whatever it
Very
tries to do.
interesting. That's very interesting. Because even for me on something super simple, because I always try to test them even on the simplest things just to see if it can do a better job. Like I'm creating a thumbnail, literally creating a thumbnail for YouTube. It rerouted me to Opus 4.0. And I tried to go back and forth to ask why, and it just obviously wouldn't give me an answer.
No, it can't. I don't think it can reflect on an externally imposed guardrail with any. It can tell you something, but it won't really be reflecting reality necessarily.
Yeah. No, it was absolutely nuts. So I will just say for now, there's no reason for me to go back to Claude. And I know we've had this discussion before about not necessarily needing best model, but the fact that Soul is just included in a $20 per month subscription, I don't see
Right.
why not to use it.
No, exactly.
One interesting thing, and people should fact check me about this. I'm not entirely sure. I have to double check this. One thing that I've noticed is, so obviously you have different levels. You have instant, low, medium, high. And then I believe
Thinking effort.
Thinking effort. And I believe if you have a higher paid subscription for OpenAI, you get extra high.
Eventually. Yeah, like a pro. I think they have a pro thinking mode.
I think it's extra high on pro. One thing interesting that I noticed is that when I use 5.6 Sol on instant, it's like a 5.5 basically.
It literally says that actually in
It does say
drop
that.
down. When you change it to instant, it says in bracket 5.5. It doesn't even use Sol.
So I will say that's one thing that I find very impressive with OpenAI that Claude doesn't do, which is literally it's like 5.5 was the best thing for them. And now 5.6 is out. And if you just want to use 5.5 but get instant answers, you just go on 5.6 and put on instant, and it's literally automatic. It's almost like it's not even thinking,
Yeah.
which I find very impressive.
Yeah.
So
I still feel like none of them have quite figured out an elegant solution to all of these drop downs. Because it's been yo-yoing, right? You've had OpenAI ending up with like a buffet of models and thinking levels. Then they tried to consolidate it drastically to only three things, like three toggles. Then they tried adaptive, like routing, where the model would itself decide which thinking effort to use. Then that didn't work too well because it rerouted to a lower, less impressive model. Then they gave you a bit more choice, and now it's exploded again. Now you can choose the model. Within the model, you can choose the thinking effort, and it just creates, again, a level of, I think, inscrutability and like complication, I think, for the average person to figure out.
yeah, yeah,
I just default, if I'm asking anything that requires any degree of research or verification, I just go straight to the highest possible, because there isn't almost any cost to doing that on
yeah,
ChatGPT, for example.
yeah.
With Claude Code, it's different because there you are hitting limits much more often.
So I noticed a couple in the chat about the app that I mentioned. I won't go too far into detail for now. Maybe we can speak about it a little bit more next time, but I will just say one thing that I was honestly very impressed by. So just long story short, for people that are maybe a little bit more familiar, there's something called zero date options, which is basically zero date, meaning like the day of. So you're trading an option within that day. It's not 6 months out. It is somewhat of a gamble, but my the thing that I was very impressed by was, without me asking, it built it in a way where it also left an option. If you think about the way we've spoken about chatbots in general, is that it's always trying to give you an A, B, C, D answer, and that's why hallucinations happen. It by default, it built in that if there's no good answer, it will tell me that there's no good trade to take that day. So instead of just trying to find a trade that might not exist, it will tell me there's no trade today. So I found that to be very impressive because I didn't
And
even think about doing that.
have you verified that's how it actually triggers? Because I think one thing is like the model coming back and reporting that this is what I've built, and then did you try to run some situations where it would be forced to give you an I don't know answer, or have you
I,
seen it happen yet? No,
I haven't run it yet. I literally just built it yesterday.
because I'd
So
love
that's
to
what I'm
hear
saying.
what the result was
Yeah.
there.
But I was very, actually not just interesting. It was, what's the best way to put it? I was just impressed. I was impressed that it even ran that
Reflected
as
on it, yeah.
yeah, without me even asking, which is something that I should have asked for, because if I didn't, then it would just try to find a trade no matter what. So I'm interested to see once I actually run it.
Yeah.
And I was also very interested to see the fact that there was almost no talk about how this isn't financial advice or something along those lines, which made me really think about, I'm sure people out there are already using AI for trading and for things of that nature. And if there's any guardrails at all set up to at least point people in the right direction to let them know, hey, it's a tricky situation. It's not exact. So we'll
Mm.
see. I'd be glad to discuss it more next week. I'm going to be working on it.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess for me, just to the main comparison, and I actually have really considered, because I have so many subscriptions at this point, I have actually considered canceling my cloud subscription again.
I think you just went for it, right? You just got the subscription last time because of Fable,
Yeah.
and you've come full circles to say, yeah, you know what? I'm just not, no, I don't need it anymore again.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I don't know if it's just me or if everybody feels this way, but like I mentioned to you, Daniel, like I get rerouted for every request with Fable. I don't know
Yeah,
if it's
okay,
because of
that's a very frustrating experience if that's what happens. Obviously, that's
I don't know if it's because of what I tried to do, which
you're just a fishy operator. Some Claude has you on some kind of a watch list,
it
so
could
it's
be
just
because
like just in case.
I
Let's
mentioned
reroute
this
this
to
guy.
you with when we were streaming with Joel. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember about how I tried to jailbreak it, like stupidly, not seriously.
yeah,
And then I got that message from OpenAI about
yeah.
deactivating my account. So maybe I actually am on a watch list. It wouldn't be that hard to imagine that they have a watch list of people that are because they tried one thing that was actually serious.
All chatbots now know not to honor any of your requests.
Yeah. But yeah, so anything else that you want to add about Soul, about Fable in general, or
No, I think if it's just, if anything, both of them just show that as much as the labs try to position things as being like unique and niche, I think we're basically seeing more like generational ladders, right? Like the reasoning model comes out and somebody is first to it, but then everybody usually catches up. Which is like Fable is too horny, too smart to release, godlike, and then you have Soul 5.6, which is basically the same answer. And I'm sure everybody else will be on that level again, and then there'll be another generational shift. So I think convergence is a good word, but with what you usually see with these kind of like leapfrogging of generations.
yeah. I personally think that we've reached like an inflection point. I think that we reached a point where the model releases got faster and faster. It went from a couple months to a month to a week. And I think now it's actually going to slow down just based on the
Interesting.
government getting involved. And it's not just going to be company to public anymore. It's going to be company to government to public. And I think that cost efficiency is going to start becoming
Yeah.
a real factor now, not just what's the strongest, because a lot of people are going to probably already realize they don't need the strongest for most of the use cases, even though they may want it. I think it's gonna be a cost factor now. I'm interested. Have you ever tried like any of the Chinese models?
Yeah, I've used the one that made the rounds lately was GLM 5.2 because it was supposed to be really good at coding, like almost like Opus 4.8 level coding, and it's open source. So I've experimented with a lot of them. I've tried Quen's models, I've tried Minimax models. So I do test them whenever they come out just to be like, but not in any robust way. And again, for most use cases that the average person will have, many of them are also more than competent, I would say.
Yeah.
What about you? What is your impression?
I've played around a bit. I'm a little bit, I don't know if the right scared to use them, but so just it's a little off topic from Fable and Soul, but I think in terms of the cost efficiency, it is on topic. So there's a couple numbers if I remember correctly, and I'll mention an example. As of now, within American companies, approximately 30%, this is based on Open Router, 30% of all American companies are using Chinese models for cost efficiency purposes. And
Yeah.
on high traffic days, it gets closer to 50%, which is pretty crazy to think about that American companies are throwing trust aside and saying what's more cost efficient.
And is this specifically for companies or just overall users? Because I see a lot of people like individuals recommending using Open
Yeah.
Router for your own. Like instead of writing Claude code like myself, I can route it or use an Open Router to basically use any other, like including Chinese model in my harnesses.
Yeah.
So is that true that it's specifically companies, like 50% of companies? I would, because that would be a very surprisingly high number.
Those stats were for companies. So
Wow.
it was 30% on average, and then I believe 46% on high traffic days, American companies.
Okay.
And the real interesting thing about that is if you go 12 months behind, the average was 11%. So it almost did a 3x in a year. And I think like the American AI companies are just trying to get stronger and stronger models and pushing costs to the side for the most part. So I think that's a real effect here. And then on top of that, there was also an example, which I heard about from Chris from Toxec, TOXSEC. There's a Chinese tech giant called Meituan that released a model secretly. So Americans and American companies were using it without knowing it was a Chinese model. And
Interesting.
they named it Owl Alpha. And then later on, they revealed to the public that it's a Chinese model. And it was the reason they did it is to show how good it is. And basically, it was on the order of as good as like GPT 5.5 or Opus 4.8 for somewhat of a tenth of the cost.
Yeah, but that sounds like you're describing GLM 5.2. Right? I mean, that's the one that made the round, saying that specifically that it's at that level and it is about 10 or more times cheaper if you just do it an API billing stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're not too concerned about whatever security issues there might be or data privacy issues, if you just want to build, it's clear you will go for something that costs 1/10 of the price and gives you the same performance, right? In most cases,
Yeah.
just for pure financial reasons.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm actually curious how the whole open source impact will be, because typically open source is lagging behind like several months. But unless you are operating at that cutting edge of capabilities. Maybe being 2-3 months behind, but 10 times cheaper is actually sufficient for a lot of use cases.
Yeah.
And people are happy to do that. So
Yeah.
how much of a difference does it make?
Absolutely. All right. So before we wrap up here, it was a bit of a shorter stream today. We'll just, I guess, maybe a couple chats here. Really appreciate everybody for joining. So if anything that catches your mind, I'll pick one or two. You could pick one or two, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
Let's see. Magic Mike that says that, Daniel, I saw you on with Claudia yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the question. The question I think was something like, how often should you worry about agents like deleting stuff? And I said, basically, always. Just be always worried, even though it happens very rarely. You still want to have backups and just never end up in a situation where you lose something critical. So
Yeah.
just be worried at all times.
I like the Terrence McKenna shout out. He was an interesting man. Let's see. Lee Shan says, yeah, I got flagged auditing my vault as it picked up on treatment for Parkinson's.
Interesting.
Switch to Opus. 4.8 is getting unreliable. Interesting. I haven't felt
4.6
that too
rather, it
much.
seems actually.
Oh, 4.6, sorry.
Which is, I haven't found that in my own use because I use 4.6 quite often. But yeah, I think it's also funny that you can have quite different experiences. You and I are two people, right? And your Fable has been giving you roadblocks at all stopped, and I have not yet witnessed personally a rerouting happen yet at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm not just saying it for fun. It's literally every request.
That's crazy.
Even as simple as giving me a thumbnail prompt for me to go take over a Gemini.
That's funny.
Yeah, I see about the app. I'll speak about that a bit more next week. Let's see. OpenAI, Sam has a fight with Apple. That's a big one. Will Ty, I'm skeptical or cautious of using the Chinese models concerning my data security, but that probably applies to all AI models. I understand that if you run them locally, the risk is somewhat mitigated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, open source, the whole idea for a lot of people is that if you install it locally and you run it locally, you are in principle not sharing your data with anything. It all stays locally because you download the model weights. But of course, to run it locally, you need to, in most cases, have pretty insane hardware, even for some of the smaller models.
Yeah.
So, but that's the appeal of open source for a lot of people who are data conscious. It is basically only contained on your own laptop and it doesn't even make any calls to the internet. It interacts with the model and its weights on your local hardware. So if you are very privacy conscious, open source is the way to go.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
you can run it offline.
Yeah. For that, you can use something like I think it's underrated, local models. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wrap it up here. Go about our days. I'm just going to put in the chat. That's the YouTube channel. If you guys can go subscribe, really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you, Daniel. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Leor, and I hope you survive through all the parenthood wake ups.
We'll make it through. We'll make it through, just like everybody else. Thank you, everybody in the chat. And
Thanks for joining,
enjoy the rest of
everyone.
your day. Bye now.
Take care.